Hello and welcome to today's LinkedIn Live with Lynnaire. I'm your host, Lynnaire Johnston, and wherever you are in the world, thank you so much for tuning in and joining us today. Now, I'm very excited about today's episode because we have a returning guest, Dan Domingue from Albuquerque, who is joining us to talk about a subject that is very dear to my heart, and that is senior leadership on LinkedIn. Now, I'm going to be setting the scene on that in just a moment, but first of all, let me just explain a couple of things. First of all, who am I? Well, I'm a LinkedIn specialist, and you can tell from my accent that I'm a New Zealander, and my team and I help individuals and businesses learn how to leverage the power of LinkedIn to achieve their professional goals. Now, we do that through our content here on LinkedIn, our coaching, our training, our profile makeover and content services, plus most importantly, our members site, LinkAbility.biz. Now, this has dozens of hours of content about all aspects of LinkedIn for every level of proficiency, from beginner to advanced. So please do check that out at LinkAbility.biz. Oh, and it's free for 7 days. So let's move on to some housekeeping. Now, my two team members are on the call today, Cher and Gillian. Now, they'll be monitoring comments, answering any questions that are related to the event, but you are very welcome to add questions in for Dan to answer too. Now, I would like you to just know about this. Please ignore any comments that have our logo on them and that try to take you to another link. They are malicious spam and not to be trusted. So any comments that have our LinkAbility logo, please feel free to ignore them. That said, we'd love to hear from you in the comments with your questions and ideas. Now, before I introduce our very lovely guest today, Dan Domingue, who's back for a second time, by the way, I'd like to set the scene for you as to why this topic today. Ever since I began working with senior leaders some years ago now, I realized that most were unaware of the opportunities that LinkedIn offers people in their position. It gives them a platform on which to demonstrate their thought leadership, their expertise, and to share their knowledge and ideas with others. But those I was coming into contact with were largely using it as a placeholder for their online CV and not keeping it updated either with new information or to comply with current best practice. They tended only to pay attention when they found themselves needing a new job. They didn't know that LinkedIn has moved well beyond being just a recruitment site. While it still is that, of course, it is also so much more. It's where networks are built, relationships are developed, and credibility is demonstrated. It's where their support of their organization is shown or not. It's where they communicate with their customers, suppliers, and teams. If anything, I'd argue that LinkedIn is a leadership tool to a very great extent. Unfortunately, little seems to have changed in terms of leaders' understanding of the platform, despite LinkedIn's growth to more than 1 billion members and it becoming a force to be reckoned with in business. It's also changed out of all recognition in the last decade. You know, when I first started paying it some attention back in 2014, you couldn't even publish a post, only articles. And look at us now with our weekly events, LinkedIn Lives like this, alternating with audio events and so much more to get in front of those who want to hear from us. Last year saw more than 200 changes to the platform, giving all of us even more opportunities to grow our professional brands, become visible to those interested in hearing from us, and opening doors. In the past few years, leadership's changed too. Beginning before COVID, it began to move more from the traditional hierarchical model to being more collaborative. A long-term process, I suspect. but one where team members are encouraged to grow and develop their own expertise rather than simply being told what to do. And this is a generalization, I know, but modern leadership is more consensus based, and traits such as communication and self awareness are not just abstract ideas, but are taken seriously. Again, LinkedIn has a role to play here. And someone who knows more about leadership than most is our very good friend and colleague, Dan Domingue, who joins us today from Albuquerque. For 4 years, Dan was the Chief Growth Officer of the Y Institute. He worked with many senior leaders and knows how they think. He's recently founded Why Not Leadership, specifically focusing on developing senior leaders. Now, I've invited Dan here today to talk about modern leadership and how LinkedIn can help those leaders to make the impact they want to have on the world around them. So, Dan, hello, welcome, and please could we start by you telling us what exactly Why Not Leadership actually is?
Thank you so much. That is such a great introduction, Lynnaire. I'm going to take you. By the way, I saw Alejandro said hello from Mexico. I'm doing a keynote in Mexico in a couple of weeks, and I want you to come down and introduce me. That was such a powerful, good introduction. And those of you who are fans of Joel Weldon, the great speaker coach, he says the most important part of your presentation is that introduction, having a powerful introduction. And Lynnaire, you killed it. Thank you so much. I appreciate you asking me what Why Not Leadership is. And we've known each other for a few years. We met through LinkedIn, and we've got a great bunch of people that we have in common that we know. And I will tell you, I'll give you a compliment here. Everyone that Lynnaire has ever introduced me to has been an amazing human being, and I've enjoyed thoroughly meeting them. So that's a power of a powerful network. But what is Why Not Leadership? As you know, you were a guest on my previous show, Why Not Wednesday. So when I was the Chief Growth Officer at Y Institute, I liked my how, and we'll talk about the 9 whys. My why is contribute, just like Lynnaire. We both like to make a difference in the lives of others. But my how is to challenge the status quo and do things differently. So, of course, working at a company called Y Institute, why wouldn't my show be called Why Not? Because that's almost the opposite, right? And I like to talk on Why Not Wednesday. My topic was always, why not do things that others don't do? Why not challenge the status quo? Why not say why not? I read a book called the 9 Top Regrets of the Dying. And I put this in my show description. People at the end of our life, we don't regret the things we did. We regret the things we didn't do. The things we didn't say why not to. So that was the theme of that show. And through that, I started meeting a lot of people who said, why not? And so that was my signature question. Tell me about your biggest why not moment. So when I decided that, hey, I've learned a lot, Gary Sanchez and the Y Institute were such a great experience, such a great 4 years of my life, learning and meeting so many amazing coaches around the world. We have coaches in every country in the world, and meeting so many people. I started getting the bug that, hey, I can help people too by helping them discover their YOS. And so I said, who do I want to talk to? So this is perfect with the topic for today. Knowing my why. Knowing that my why is contribute, my how is to challenge the status quo, and that my what is to make sense of things. I wanted to make sure that my show attracted people that want to challenge the status quo. And it's called Why Not Leadership. And my podcast is going to be called Lead Different. And my wife, who's a clarifier, Lynnaire, said, different? Shouldn't it be lead differently? And I said, exactly. If it said lead differently, it would attract people that follow the rules. By being lead different, I'm attracting people that say, I like that. That breaks the rules. And those are the people I want to work with. So as a leader, you want to put content out that attracts people to you that believe what you believe. And so Why Not Leadership is all about working with leaders who want to connect better with their teams through the power of self-awareness. It's a long answer, Lynnaire. You knew I was going to be short on words, right?
Yeah, but that's why we love you, Dan. Good explanations are a great idea because it does set the scene and explains to everybody who may not be familiar with you and your work exactly why you're on the hot seat here today. So I'd like to move on from there, Dan, to a review of the 9 whys so that people who may not be familiar with the concept of the 9 whys understand how it works and what it means. So tell us about the 9 whys.
This is great. Thank you so much, and thank you for pulling up the graphics. So if you're listening, take a picture. I know how we do screen cap. Take a screen capture so you can keep this. But let's do a quick review so that we're all on the same page. So that once we're all on the same page, then when we talk about these things, they're going to make a lot more sense. So our founder and CEO at the Y Institute, which supports all the work that I do at Why Not Leadership, came up with this concept about, oh gosh, it's been about 12 years. And he discovered that all of us have a why. And there are 9 whys. We've now done this with over 300,000 people, and we haven't found that elusive 10th why yet. So everybody that takes the YOS discovery comes in with one of these whys. Now, the real genius thing that Gary did is he figured out the why operating system, which is the full why, how, and what that Simon Sinek talked about, back in 2008. Can you believe it? We're 16 years ago already. So back in 2008, Simon Sinek told us we need to know our why. Well, Gary Sanchez saw that TED Talk and said, I want to know my why. Contacted Simon and said, Simon, can you help me discover my why? And Simon didn't have a system or a method yet, but Gary hired him, and together they came up with a process to figure out Gary's why. And then Gary became obsessed with it, and he came up with this process. So these are the 9 whys. Everybody in the world has one of these as their why. The first one is contribute. People who want to make a difference, contribute to a greater cause, and add value. That's Lynnaire and I. So we are kindred spirits when it comes to that. Trust, to create relationships based on trust. These are people that believe that trust is the most important thing. If they trust you and you trust them, sky's the limit. You violate their trust, it can really have a negative impact on the relationship. So very important to know this about people. Make sense. People who like to make sense of things, especially if they're complex or complicated, these are your problem solvers. These are the people that you can throw a lot of data at, numbers at, issues at, and they really quickly process it and say, I know what we need to do. And I know you have this in your top 3, Lynnaire. So this is a really good YOS or why to have in your top 3. Better way. To find a better way and share it with others. These are people who love to innovate. They take things that exist and make them better. They're really good at taking things from one industry and seeing it work in another. The beautiful thing about Better Way people, which is Gary's why, the founder of Y Institute, is when they find a better way, they share it with others. They love sharing those better ways with other people. So that's how they contribute to the world. Right way. These are people who believe in systems and processes. These are the people that create the rules, the policies and procedures. They like to do things the right way in order to get results. What's great about these people is they will create the structure and the processes. For those creatives out there that like to have a lot of ideas but don't like to write things down, these are the people that write it down and put a system in place so you can share your genius with the world. Very valuable team members. Challenge. People who like to think differently and challenge the status quo. These are people that like to ask the question, why do we have to do it that way? These are the people that say, why not? Because they like to think outside the box. They like to bring different and new perspectives to everything that they do. Mastery. These are people who like to seek mastery and understanding. They like to learn things at a really deep level. And it's one of the whys that's usually referred to as subject matter experts. These are the people you can go to them and they're going to know their stuff. They will reach mastery where you and I might delve, basically between you and I, you're probably you have more mastery of LinkedIn than I do, but you talk to somebody with the why of mastery who is a LinkedIn expert and they will know every little detail. So there's probably a little bit of mastery in Lynnaire, and I would love to look in her 9 deep questionnaire to figure that out. Clarify, to make things crystal clear and understandable. These are people who want to make sure that in everything they do, they have clarity. They ask a lot of questions. So Lynnaire, if you've given a keynote, these are the people that when everybody goes to lunch, they're still raising their hand, asking questions. Wait, I have one more question. They're the what if this, what if that. So for them, it's all about clarity. And when they have clarity, they move forward. If they don't have clarity, they stay stuck and they don't move. And then the last one is simplify. People who like to decrease complexity, for them, it's all about making things simple and easy to understand. Great communicators because they take stuff that's complex and make it simple so that everybody understands it. So there's a little bit of that in you, Lynnaire, because you take in the world of LinkedIn and helped us make sense of it in your great newsletters that you put out. And I love getting that information because it's all in one place and easy.
Well, I love doing it, Dan, and one of the reasons I love doing it because it simplifies it for myself. If I can understand it enough, then I can write about it. I can't write about it if I don't understand it. So that's where I come from, and I think it's my journalism background that makes it easier for me to do that. Because if you can write in a way and communicate in a way that people can understand, then people get your message. There's an awful lot of obfuscation about long words, jargon, and kind of passages or words, phrases that people don't really understand because they really have just come into the common lexicon or been taken over, and nobody really understands what they mean anymore. But I have a question about the whys before we move on. Is there a pattern with senior leaders in terms of these whys? Is there a tendency for senior leaders to be more in one of those 9 categories and to have a very similar why? Or is it just random?
You know what? It is random. There are some patterns that we see, but senior leaders can have all of these whys. What we'll find is a lot of your visionaries, a lot of your out-of-the-box thinkers will be challenge or better way because they find better ways and they're visionaries and they're always looking for a better way. They tend to change things that exist and make them better, or they challenge the status quo. A couple of famous ones, Steve Jobs definitely challenged. Yeah, Elon Musk definitely challenged the status quo. Herb Kelleher, Southwest Airlines in the U.S., he came into the airline industry and said, we're not going to have reservations. We're going to have assigned seats. We're not going to have first class, and we're not going to give you meals. And everybody thought, you're crazy. But they're the most on-time airline, and they're the best airline over the last 50 years. So these are people that will tend to change the world, right? Because they believe they can change the world, and they actually do. So visionaries tend to be better way or challengers. But, we've got, Edward Jones is the financial planning company, right? What is their motto? Making sense of investment, right? They help people make sense of the investing world. So they take the complex and challenging and make sense of it for their clients. So their clients don't have to be the experts. So there's a gift in every one of the whys. I've seen leaders with every single one of the whys. And the key for, I think, for our audience today, it's knowing what that is so you know how to communicate it to the world. So the world knows what your gift is.
I absolutely agree. And you know what? Something that struck me when you were talking just then that had never occurred to me before when you were talking about the company using their why in their tagline. We should be using our why in our tagline. If my main why is contribute, as you've already said, but that makes sense. But no, they make it simple.
Yes.
Make it simple.
Right. So it's contribute, simplify, makes sense. Yes.
Okay. So it makes sense. But even if I had a tagline for my company that said simplifying LinkedIn, so you don't have to, or something along those lines. There's no reason why we can't think outside the box and use those in our companies as well. That's worth the price of admission, Dan, just for today. So I think that's brilliant. So I want to move from there to asking you about what you're seeing in terms of trends with senior leadership at the moment, because I mentioned that there is a change in how leadership is being done these days, which I think everybody would be very pleased to see. And how is that manifesting itself? What are you seeing happen around that in terms of how they are involving other people, because to my mind, leaders have always been put a bit on a pedestal. You know, they've been up there and out of reach of the rest of us. And I see that changing for the better. So I'm wanting to know whether that's what you're seeing when the people, with the people you're working with, whether they're becoming more self-aware and understanding that, you know, in 2024, things have got to change.
Yeah, well, you know, one of the things that I do, Lynnaire, one of the things we do at Why Not Leadership is work with leaders to help them understand themselves. Because a lot of times, if a leader doesn't, there's a reason if a CEO is so busy that they don't have time to update their profile. A lot of times, it's not that they don't have the time, is they don't know what to say. So our good friend, Mark Halpert, who you introduced me to, by the way, his why is contribute, challenge, better ways. So he and I are two for three. You and I are 2 for 3 also. So we connect with people that are similar to us, believe similarly to what we believe. But he talks about the importance of when you're going to post, if nothing else, if you know who you are, and just like you talked about, if you know yourself, put stuff out. And so what Mark says is put stuff out. You want to, is there something you know that you think people need to know? Then let's share that. Is there something you love that you think other people would love? Then share that. And if there's something you believe in that you think other people should believe in or might also believe in, let's share that. But then let's share it from a place that lets people know who you are. I think it's a missed opportunity if you're a senior leader and you lead thousands, hundreds, or tens of thousands, that those people don't know you based on who you are. And so in the work that I do with leaders, and I take someone, so let's take Lynnaire, for example. Lynnaire, your why is to contribute to the success of others. In everything you do, you want to make a difference, make a positive impact, and help others. How you do that is by simplifying the complex and challenging. And then what you bring, what you deliver are solutions that make sense and solve problems. So just knowing that about you, I bet we can come up with some great posts, right? What is it that you believe? You believe in contributing to the success of others. So what can we expect from LinkAbility? LinkAbility is going to help you. So let's talk about how LinkAbility can help you succeed. What is LinkAbility? How are they going to do that? They're going to simplify things. At LinkAbility, they're going to make things simple and easy to understand. We can talk about how to simplify LinkedIn for a long time, right? And then ultimately what you deliver are solutions that make sense. So when a leader says, but what would I post about? Well, let's start letting people know who you are. And here's the other important thing. So I'm going to add to what Mark would say. If you believe something and you share it with the world, you're going to attract people who believe what you believe. And that was part of Simon Sinek's original TED Talk. If you tell people what you believe, you're going to attract people who believe what you believe. Edward Jones says we make sense of investments. Guess what? He attracts people. Edward Jones attracts people that want somebody to help them make sense of their investments. And so if you put out, hey, I simplify LinkedIn, you're not going to get people that already know it all. You're going to get people that say, hey, I know it all, but I want it simple and easy. So can you help me? Of course I can. So when you tell people what you believe, you attract people who believe what you believe. And so understand, and again, starting with self-awareness, if you understand who you are and then you can put it out there, then you're going to attract the kind of clients to your company, to your business that are attracted to that which you do best, which in your case, it's contributing to the success of others, simplifying things, and then helping make sense of them.
That makes sense to me, Dan, which is a very good thing, really. Can you tell me then what you think the barriers are for people, for senior leaders who, you talked about time being a factor, which I just think personally is an excuse, because there's plenty of people like me around who can help people overcome that particular barrier. But what is it that's holding senior leaders back from really using all that LinkedIn has to offer? Because I'm a great believer in the opportunities that LinkedIn provides, Dan, and I know that you're the same, because you and I know each other well enough to know that we've crossed paths on many different occasions in different ways. We know a lot of the same people, and we know the value of the opportunities that LinkedIn can provide us. And I believe that a lot of senior leaders are not aware of that. I don't think that it's well, I don't know. Let me ask you the question. Is one of the main barriers to senior leaders really taking a good stand on LinkedIn just simply that they don't know about the opportunities that it provides, or is it something else?
It's interesting when you posted the link to this live show. It was one of the things I thought about, and when I posted it to my network, I said, "Are you a senior leader that wants to be more active on LinkedIn, or do you work for a senior leader that you're trying to get to be more active on LinkedIn?" I think there's a couple of reasons that people aren't active. One is there is that time crunch. Leaders have a lot of things to do. So, and this is coaching 101. You don't have to spend every day on LinkedIn. I post almost every day, but I have a scheduled time that I do that. And then the rest of the time, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, because leaders don't have time to stay on LinkedIn all day long. And then and so I think just being disciplined about creating. So whether that's creating a content calendar, for me, when I scroll through LinkedIn during the time that I allot for spending on LinkedIn, if I see a great post from Lynnaire, I do something really simple. I save it. And then if I'm looking for something to post or something to share with my audience on a day that I'm short on time, I know I have a brilliant post that Lynnaire posted 3 days ago that I'm going to reshare, right? So not all of it is about creating content. Other things, CEOs and leaders, you have teams. So a lot of it is, you don't have to come up with the graphics. I don't need my CEO to be a Canva expert creating amazing graphics. If you can just say to your team, "Hey guys, I had this brilliant idea that I want to talk about. Can you help me come up with that?" They'll come up with the graphics. You put the content. Have your team let your team have access to your LinkedIn and have them help you post that brilliant stuff that's in your head that the world needs to know, needs to hear. So, and then make sure you take ownership of it. I think one of the important things is, sometimes I said this in a post earlier in the week. I'll be interacting with a CEO on LinkedIn, and we get into a great conversation, and then I finally get that appointment with them where we're going to talk, and has no idea what we're talking about because someone else has been managing it, right? So very important that you stay abreast of it. And if you do have someone managing, we understand being busy, but make sure that before you have that meeting with Lynnaire, you take a look at that chat thread that you've been talking for 2 weeks, or your social media manager has been having a conversation with, so that you're on top of it. If you have a good team, and this is the other great thing about knowing your why, how, and what. My team knows my why, how, and what. And if they happen to have to answer for me because I'm out of town, I'm on vacation, or I'm too busy, they know how to speak in my language, so that they're not talking from, the person's not saying, "Well, that doesn't sound like Dan at all." So there are tips and tricks to allow us. And I don't expect the CEO of Boeing to be on LinkedIn all the time, but if he got on once a week, I guarantee you there would be lots of people in the airline industry that would be listening and following and catching that. The other thing, it's such a great way to communicate with the people in your company. Yeah. What's important, right? Can recognize someone. I worked at a Fortune 500 company for 17 years. Baxter Healthcare was a great company, but I remember that I rarely got on because I was too busy leading my sales teams to get on. And so what ends up happening is I would every once in a while post something when somebody got promoted. But boy, did I get a lot of reactions as a senior leader in a company when I took the time to recognize that I just promoted someone, or that somebody just won an award within the company. Man, their whole family came up and congratulated, liked, and put a lot of comments on there. So it's a tool you can use to recognize your teams and the achievements of the people that are working for you.
And I think that's really important and is something that a lot of senior leaders often miss,
Hmm.
that whole employee advocacy idea. So to take it one step further, when employees put up posts about their area of expertise, then the company, as the company page, and the senior leaders need to be backing that post as well. Or even if they're not doing it in person, Dan, as you say, their manager of their profile needs to be doing that, just to show that that is what happens in this company. Because I think that companies where that doesn't happen, where teams are operating almost independently, if you like, of their
Hmm.
senior leaders on LinkedIn, is a waste of an opportunity to show that kind of not only leadership, but that kind of cohesion that employees want to see. So, in other words, if you are looking for a new role, you want to work for a company that looks like it is really developing its people. And by doing so, then the company looks better, the person becomes more skilled in their area of
Right.
expertise, and everybody benefits. But I'm seeing too often where that is absolutely simply not happening at all. And you've brought up several really good points, one of which was about scheduling posts, which LinkedIn allows you to do now. So there's absolutely directly, so you don't have to use a third party app. And that's a really useful way of saving some time. And also about engagement. And I think that's something that senior leaders probably pay less attention to than they should, because it is, in my view, probably one of the most, it's not probably, it is one of the most important things you can do on LinkedIn. Posting will get you so far, but engaging with the people who have commented on your post and engaging on other people's posts is so much more valuable, because that's how relationships get built, credibility gets built, and trust, Dan, because
Yes.
of course, at the bottom of all of this, isn't it all about building trust with those that we want to do business with?
Well, absolutely. And as I said earlier, and you're reiterating, it's how you build those relationships. I wanted there's a comment in the chat that I want to make sure I talk about. Gina Ballerin talked about your question about why most senior leaders aren't on LinkedIn. And she says, maybe it's just that they just don't care, right? It's not enough of a priority, and it's sad. And Gina wrote a great book called The Secret Army. This is a great way for you to build that secret army that's going to talk about you, your product, and your company when you're not in the room. And again, engagement with other people's posts. When you see people at a really high level engaging with the posts of the people in their company, right? When the marketing team has taken the time to put something together to show off something that your company did, when the CEO comments on it, that's a big deal, not just for your clients, but it's a big deal for that team that's been working really hard to get the word out about what it is that you're doing, what it is that's important in your company. So, I really do. I agree with Gina. It's a missed opportunity because you miss the opportunity to inspire your teams, to influence their marketing, and, and to let them know that you noticed.
Yes.
Sometimes, when we're operating in a world where 70% of current job holders are actively looking for another job, and when we know that retention is driven so much by recognition, when we survey people and they say, you know what, I would be more productive if my boss would just notice what I do.
Mm.
Employees who are engaged are 41% more productive. So why wouldn't we not want to take every opportunity we can, find out what's important to them, and then comment, share, and inspire?
And inspire loyalty. I think that that is something that's often lacking for
Mhm.
people these days. And we all want meaningful relationships, Dan, whether that's in our private lives or in our professional lives. We want to feel, like you say, we're making a difference, that people are noticing us, and that they care about what we do, and about our success. And I think that that's probably something that senior leaders may not actually be remembering. And I just want to pause here for a moment and say, if I remember rightly, Gina was the person who introduced you and I right back in the beginning of when we first met each other. Am I right about that? I'm pretty
You are
sure.
absolutely right.
I thought I
Yes,
was. All right. So,
Gina discovered her why of make sense, her how of challenge, and her what of better way. So again, 2 out of 3. She's got challenge and make sense. Those are part of my top 3. You've got make sense and contribute, which are 2 of my top 3. And Mark has contribute and challenge, which are 2 of my top 3. Amazing pattern we're seeing there.
oh, I think there might be something in that, Dan. There's no question. Now, I want to ask a bit of a tough question, really. And that is, do you think that one of the reasons that perhaps we're not seeing so much of senior leaders on LinkedIn might be the fact that our senior leaders tend to be older people who didn't grow up with social media and for whom it is often uncharted territory and, let's face it, pretty scary nowadays? Now, I would argue that LinkedIn isn't social media and that it's a business tool, as you know. But I'm wondering whether senior leaders probably don't see that, don't realize, as I said earlier, the opportunities, but are still lumping it in with social media and then consequently going, nope, I'm not having a bar of social media, not going to be on it, don't want to know about it. Is age a factor, do you think?
You know, it's interesting you say that, Lynnaire. I'm a golfer. And the other day I was playing in a tournament and I got paired up with a bunch of old guys. And I said, "Hey, what happened? Why am I paired up with the old guys?" You know what the pro said? He said, "Dan, you are one of the old guys." And so
I know
here's
it is an
here's
ironic question coming from someone like me. I understand that, but
no,
I think it's valid.
but you know, I think I think that's yet another excuse. It doesn't take much, and I agree with you. LinkedIn is not like other social media. I mean, it is the primary platform that I work in, and I have worked in it for a long time because it is so professional. You know, you're not going to get a lot of, I mean, I can't stand other social media. I have one social media app on my phone, and it is LinkedIn. The others are sometimes, you know, my sister will sometimes say, "Hey, did you see the picture I posted?" I said, "No," but I'll have to go log in on my computer because that's the only time I'm going to look at Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, that kind of stuff. I've never downloaded TikTok. So I'm one of those old fuddy duddies, right? If I sometimes, you know, people will post some really brilliant stuff on TikTok and it makes it to LinkedIn. And then in that case, I'll log in. But here's the thing. Um, yes, I mean, of course, senior leaders are going to be a little bit older, but I think in 2024, we've all seen the impact of social media.
Oh,
We've all
yeah.
benefited from it, and a platform like LinkedIn definitely makes it a comfortable place where
Mm,
this is a place where you can post some deep, thought-provoking information that you either know and want to share, love and want others to love, or believe and want to see who else believes, and get some great comments, get some great um, feedback. It's also, you know, take advantage of the polls. I would love to see senior leaders putting out polls and then saying to their marketing team, "Well, hey, guys, I did a poll on my LinkedIn and turns out that people don't really like this product." Can you imagine a CEO of like a Kraft Foods or something doing something like that? And then giving but I can also, you know, I've worked in sales, my bachelor's degrees in marketing. I've worked in business development all my life, but I love marketing too. And marketing people would probably just eat that up, that their CEO actually ran a poll and did. So if you're a CEO and you're listening and you want to get bold, here's what I will tell you. And this is a shameless plug. Contact these amazing people like Lynnaire. Either contact them yourself or have your social media director contact Lynnaire and build your profile. Make it look good. There are so many amazing LinkedIn experts that are part of Lynnaire's network that you can
mm.
contact to help you build a great profile. She's been so great with me. I know that one of the things that she did for me early on was just take a look at my profile and said, "Hey, here are some things you can do better." And when you hire these people, they are worth every penny. So I'm going to put a shameless plug in for you, Lynnaire.
Well, that's very kind of you, Dan. Thank you. Because one of the things I love to do, in fact, is to help senior leaders to take a profile that looks pretty average and really turn it into something special. And LinkedIn is making that so much easier with a whole bunch of new features that are coming out at such a rapid rate of knots that I almost don't want to get out of bed in the morning because there's going to be so much happening. Have happened overnight because, of course, we're a day ahead of the rest of the world. So when the rest of the world is up and about, we're in bed asleep, and consequently I'll wake up in the morning, there's a whole bunch of new things that have arrived that I need to make sense of and try to help people with. But you did mention polls, and I want to make a comment about polls because there's been the new algorithm report from Richard van der Blom's just been released in the last 2 days. And in it, he says that polls are one of, if not the most far-reaching and most high-performing formats of posting at present. So if you want to put up a poll, then you will find that it works really well. If you keep the questions simple and you have only 3 potential answers, then you will find you'll get a really good response to your poll. So there, put up a poll if you're a senior leader. I think Dan's absolutely on the nail with that particular one, quite decidedly. All right, so I want to talk a bit about visibility of senior leaders on LinkedIn because I think that it's really important for them to be seen. And there are a number of ways to do that. One of them, of course, is to have a really good, strong, compelling profile with all the, lots of new features. One of them is, of course, posting, and we've already discussed about that. But here's one that I'm wondering whether you're seeing much of an uptake on with your clients, and that is video. Now, the reason I mention video is because with the arrival of AI and LinkedIn's huge uptake of it on the platform, it is getting more and more difficult to determine who's actually written the content you've just read and who hasn't. And of course, we all want to be seen to be authentic, and for the content that we provide to come from our own heads rather than the giant brain of AI. So video seems to me to be a really good way to be able to do that. There's live video like this, right. And of course then there are video posts and also other ways that you can get video onto your profile. Now, how are you finding senior leaders are taking to video, or is that just one step too far?
Well, first of all, I think video is a great way. By the way, great post earlier this week by you with video, and you educated us on your national holiday that you had. Fantastic way to use video. I think there's a couple of things that are great about video. Video shows people that it's you talking, right? It's a great way to make sure you connect, and it's something I'm working on because with a podcast about to launch, I sometimes like to post a video or a clip, but I have not sat in front of this camera and done what you bravely did earlier this week. So I think it's a challenge for a lot of us. It may be the step too far, but here's the thing: whatever your why is, for Dan Dominguez, whose contribute challenge makes sense. You know what? If it's scary, I want to do it, right? But if let's say you're a right way person and you're someone who just loves structure and processes and systems, guess what? Again, you've got 3,900 employees. I bet somebody there knows how to operate an iPhone camera and knows how to put you in some good light and will gladly make sure that your script is right in front of you so you can read a message that you wrote yourself that communicates something important to your audience. So it's not just for the bold. It's not just for the out of the box thinkers. It's for anybody that wants to connect authentically with others. And I think it's a great way to do that. So you just challenged me. I'm going to put a big challenge and I'm going to do some video posts in the next week because there's a couple of people that I'm working with that have asked me to share what they're doing. And I'm just going to put a video testimonial out there and you'll have to tell me how I do.
All right, I'll do that, because one of the interesting things about video, Dan, is that it gets really good engagement. So you'll get lots of comments on a video. Now, I do quite a lot of videos about my garden, because that's what I do when I'm not on LinkedIn. Is I love to garden. You play golf, and I like to garden.
Right.
And so I found that about a year ago, when I started looking at video, realizing that there was a big gap in what I was doing online with the video, was I had to sit down and figure out how to do it. Now, I'm not really technology minded. I grew up in the days when technology was just a distant dream, and now, of course, we all have cameras on our phones. That makes it really easy to record a video, and I've found that just by doing it frequently, practicing and practicing it, eventually you come up with something that's actually usable. Now, it doesn't have to be perfect. I'm a great believer in done is better than perfect, Dan.
Yes.
And I do a lot of takes before you'll see the one that actually shows up on LinkedIn. Sometimes I'll get it in one, but often I don't, because videos only have to be 1 minute and between 1 and 2 minutes long.
Mhm.
I try to keep mine to just over a minute, because that's how long I can speak without flubbing things and without stumbling and stuttering and having to start all over again. And so I think if you can remove the barriers like that, the technology barrier, we've all got the video app on our phone. All we've got to do is put it somewhere where it can record us. If we know how to use that and we are comfortable with just giving it a go, everybody has to start from somewhere. And when
Right.
I started working on video, they were terrible. They were absolutely awful. But now I just know what works well for me, and I stick to that and don't try to go too far outside the square. But what you're seeing in a video of me is me. And I think that that's really an important thing. Now, I just want to bring up on this onto the screen this message here from our friend Gina again, because I think it's worth having think about and asking the question about, and that's vulnerability.
Yeah.
Dan, do you see this as being something that could be preventing people from being more on LinkedIn, because being on LinkedIn is a scary thing to do?
Well, as you know, Lynnaire, as a person with ADHD, I actually was watching this conversation develop. So I'm so glad you brought it up, because Gina brought up the element of fear or vulnerability, and somebody talked about the fact that some people are so afraid of looking like a bonehead. Imagine 3,900 employees thinking, "Oh, what a bonehead! Look at the mistake he made on that video." And Gina brought up a great answer. She said, I see it as the opposite. What about imagine 3,900 employees thinking, what an incredible human being.
Yeah.
What a genuine person. You brought up two important things. Imperfect. I prefer imperfect action versus
Mm,
perfect inaction. Just start. You will get better. You will get better. And if you do it publicly, I can tell you, when I started doing Why Not Wednesday, it was nowhere near as good as what we had 2 years later when we started doing our episodes were more lively. We had better interaction. I got better asking the right questions. And
mm,
now I'm launching a podcast that's gonna be so different than what I would have imagined. But I wouldn't have the confidence to launch a podcast if I hadn't launched a live show three years ago, where I just invited one of my good friends, Watson Jordan, and said, "Hey, can I ask you about your biggest why not moment on a live show?" And he said, "Why not?" And we did it. And that's how that started, So 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 leaders, here's what I'll say. I'm going to talk to you leaders right now. If you're a senior leader at a company, you didn't get to where you are without failure, right? Everything that you've done, you've had some failures in your past and you've overcome them. So vulnerability, you're not immune to it. You're not immune to failure. And guess what? If you as long as listen, as long as you're not politically incorrect and say something horrible, did you flub a word, did you misquote something, you know what, all of that is going to be forgiven. Your people will appreciate hearing from you directly far more than they're going to look for the mistakes that you make. You're their leader, and I had an opportunity at a conference recently to tell a very personal story, and it was so personal and so emotional that I couldn't finish, and I started crying, and I got so many good comments. I was embarrassed because I didn't realize when I started telling this story how much of an impact it was going to have, and but the stream of people, there were about 70, 60, 70 people in the room. The stream of people that came up and said, thank you for being vulnerable, was far more positive than the negative that I thought, because I had ugly cry face, right? I couldn't finish my story. And nobody remembers that. They remember that you told a genuine story that really impacted you emotionally and that came from the heart. Authenticity, once again.
Authenticity. It's such an important word. And I think that in the current times that we live in, it's really important that we demonstrate our authenticity and just be ourselves. I think we've all spent many years trying to pretend we're other people, putting on all
Right,
kinds of faces and fronts and shows. And really, when it comes down to it, we want, when we meet somebody, whether it's on
right,
Zoom or whether it's in person, we want them to feel that they're meeting the same person that they've seen online. And that's
right,
where LinkedIn, I think, has a role to play in allowing people to be themselves and allowing people to make mistakes. And that's how you learn on LinkedIn, I think. And yes, I think it's more difficult for people who are in senior leadership roles, but they've got teams, and those teams can say, don't think so, boss, not this one, try again, and make sure that the errors that do get made aren't insurmountable and really terrible. But I do think that being authentic is something that we all need to remember is really important on LinkedIn, and that's how we do get to know people, Dan, and how they get to know us at that kind of personal level. Would you say? Yeah.
I would agree 100%, Lynnaire. And here's the thing, there's a comment. Someone commented about it, that being active on the platform, it disrupts your day. Let me say this: all you have to do is be disciplined. Yes, if you've got your phone at dinner and you're responding to LinkedIn comments, that's a problem. If you're not interacting with your family, but pick a time in the day. I do the same thing with email. I can't check email all day because it dings all day long. And if I allow myself to be distracted by email, I'll never get any of the important work that I need to get done. So set an hour, set a half hour, set 20 minutes, and say, hey, when that 20-minute alarm goes off, I'm done with LinkedIn for today, until maybe at the end of the day, I'm going to respond to some comments. And you get used to that pattern. It's just a part of your day. You can make it as short as 20 minutes, and it'll make a difference, especially if you're a senior leader.
And it'll still be there tomorrow, Dan. It's not like it's
Mhm.
going anywhere. Just because you don't respond right this minute, that doesn't matter. It'll still be there. Some people will wait, and I think that that's really an important thing for people to focus on too. Is
For
it
sure.
doesn't have to be instant. We can take our time over things, and senior leaders really need to take the time to think things through, because what they say matters. And so if a senior leader is going to write a comment on a post of someone else's, for example, then they want to make sure that what they're saying makes sense, adds to the conversation, and has some value, because people will be judging them on that. Because after all, these days, your comments can be found in the comments area of the activity section on your profile. Another innovation that LinkedIn
Yes.
gave us last year, which I really think is fabulous. I could sit and talk about LinkedIn all day. I want to start wrapping this up though, and I want to do that, Dan, by asking you, of the points we've discussed today, which are the ones that you want people to go away remembering? What are the key takeaways from our discussion today for senior leaders?
Oh man. Well, I think number one, if you're struggling for content, talk about what you believe. I love Mark Halpert's advice. Talk about what you know. Share what you know that you think other people need to know. Talk about what you love. that you think other people would love, and talk about what you believe that you think other people might believe, or people that you want to attract. Makes it really simple to create content. I think the point about vulnerability is so important. Don't be afraid to make a mistake. I think we make mistakes and we get better from them. So be someone that's willing to take a chance and share your gifts with the world, because you got to where you are because you're successful and people want to hear from you. Recognize your teams, and recognize your company and your achievements. I think that's very important. And I think the final part, when we talked about this, is be disciplined. You don't have to be on all day. You can create a discipline. As a senior leader, nobody expects you to be on every day, posting every day. Maybe all you need to do is post once a week or a couple of times a week, and then you take maybe 20 minutes, 40 minutes a week out of your busy schedule. But if you can be disciplined about it, it's not going to take over your life.
Well, if you're me, LinkedIn does take over your life, but I concede that I am a bit of an exception to the rule, because I'm absolutely obsessed by LinkedIn. And I just love the way that the platform is making so many more new features available to everybody to be able to reach a wider audience, because with now more than 1 billion members worldwide, I think that there is huge opportunity for all of us. Now, whether or not that is people who are looking for jobs, people who are leading big teams, such as senior leaders, people who are in middle management, people who are coaches, Dan, people who have their own businesses. I think that LinkedIn is the platform for those people to be reaching out and building relationships with other people, because as I said earlier, LinkedIn to me is all about building relationships. That's why you and I are here, because we've developed a relationship on LinkedIn over time. Now, we live in 2 different hemispheres. We are very unlikely to meet in person, although New Zealand is on a lot of people's bucket lists, Dan, so I'm not closing the door on that one. But I do think that being able to have a network of engaged, enthusiastic friends and colleagues on LinkedIn is one of the most important things that you can develop in your professional life. Now, that doesn't mean to say you necessarily have to post a lot on LinkedIn, or that you have to do a lot of the other things that people like me do. But building a network, I think, is the one thing that you can do on LinkedIn that is most going to impact your career for the better, is to build a really strong network. So if you haven't already connected with Dan, please make sure you reach out and connect with him. He puts out some really great content. He has some fabulous events. He's already invited me to be on his new podcast, which I'm thrilled to be able to do, and talk once again about LinkedIn. So Dan, any final words before we leave it here for today?
Well, Lynnaire, first of all, I want to say thank you for sharing your platform with me, allowing me to meet. And I have to tell you, you mentioned, New Zealand being on the bucket list. I want to recognize Danielle Dobson, who's from Australia, who I met through one of your, I think the last time I was on your show when you had me on, Danielle actually reached out to me. We discovered her Y operating system. She's actually a YOS certified coach, and I got to meet her in person when she came to Albuquerque for our annual Y Institute conference. So all the way from Australia to Albuquerque, New Mexico. So it can happen. It was such a pleasure to meet Danielle Dobson in real life after having connected through your network and Gina's network and being part of your amazing network. So thank you so much, Lynnaire. And leaders, don't be afraid. Do not be afraid to engage.
Leaders, do not be afraid. If you take nothing away from my chat today with Dan, please do take that, because it is so important to step outside your comfort zone and to really show the world who you are and what you can offer. Dan, thank you so much for spending time with us again today. I know that you're going to be back, because we always love having you, but it was too long since the last one. So we'll make sure that you're back again before too long. So everyone else, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for all your lively comments that you've been popping in there, and we really do appreciate all of that. It's been going on alongside Dan and I talking today too. So thank you so very much indeed. Next week, we've got a LinkedIn audio event. We're running that at 1 o'clock New Zealand time, so about this time of the day, the time we started this event today, because we really think that 1 o'clock in the afternoon New Zealand time is a great time for being able to talk with people in the US, people like Dan. So please do join us for our audio event next week. And we'll be back here again in a fortnight with another LinkedIn Live with Lynnaire, with another fabulous guest talking about another topic to do with LinkedIn. Thanks again, Dan, for joining us today. And thank you, everybody, for being on today's event. Bye for now. We'll see you again soon. Bye.